So today I'm going to be talking about Ohio by Stephen Markley. This was Stephen Markley's debut novel released in 2018. He also released his second novel, The Deluge, this year, and my lord, it is a chunker. This novel comes in at around 1,000 pages, and not to spoil things, but based on the strength and how much I enjoyed Ohio, I'm definitely going to be checking this one out at some point. I also want to do a shout out to Amelia from Amelia Barlow Books. She recently did a video in which she mentioned 3 novels that have been sat on my shelf for quite some time. That's The Rabbit Hutch, The Virgin Suicides, and Ohio. We were chatting in the comments and she said that Ohio was a little bit like The Bee Sting, but with a much better ending. And that was all the push I needed to grab this book off the shelf and give it a go. So thanks very much, Amelia. This novel is based around themes of war, recession, racial hostility, sex, abuse, addiction, and environmentalism. If you were to take the pain and the constant trauma of a little life, and then combine that with the structure and the character detail of The Bee Sting, and then sprinkle in a little bit of Demon Copperhead, well, that's this novel. One sweltering night in 2013, 4 former high school classmates converge on their hometown in northeastern Ohio. There's Bill Ashcraft, a passionate drug-abusing activist whose flailing ambitions have taken him from Cambodia to New Orleans. And now he's back home with a mysterious package strapped to the undercarriage of his truck. There's Stacey Moore, a doctoral candidate who is reluctantly facing her family and the mother of her best friend and first love who disappeared, and her disappearance spurs the mystery at the heart of this novel. There's Dan Eaton, a shy veteran from 3 tours in Iraq who is home on a dinner date with the high school sweetheart he is trying desperately to forget. And finally there's the beautiful yet fragile Tina Ross, whose rendezvous with the washed-up captain of the football team triggers the novel's shocking climax. Set over the course of a single night, Ohio toggles between the perspectives of these characters as they unearth dark secrets and revisit old regrets. Before the night is over, these narratives converge to reveal a dark and shocking mystery. So there you go, that's the blurb. We spend a lot of time with each character in each chapter, giving us a deep analysis of their past and present. I would say there are 3 things you need to consider before picking up this novel. Number 1, the writing is very indulgent. At first, I was a little unsure of how overly written it felt at times, but as the novel progressed, as it kept going, I just kind of fell in love with it. Number 2, this is a very dark novel. There's very little light. Sex, drugs, abuse, violence just seems to be built into the fabric of these characters in varying degrees. There is of course light moments in this novel, otherwise I wouldn't have liked it at all. There is humour, and I found many moments very funny, depending on your sense of humour, but you can't ignore the fact that it does lean very heavily towards the more darker themes, and to some people this might be considered quite excessive. Personally, I was just so wrapped up in these characters and the details of their lives that the excess of the traumatic things that happen in this novel didn't really put me off. Also, I just enjoy incredibly dark novels. The third thing, the reason I love this novel, / the reason this novel has had such a big impact on me, is because the characters in this novel are exactly my age. And their situations and their life growing up in a small town just like I did, there were just so many things in this novel that I could really relate to. Whilst reading this novel, I couldn't escape my memories of my mates at the skate park whose fates and lives followed a very similar pattern to those in this novel. I've seen and read people talking about this novel online, and a lot of people seem to think that it's quite unrealistic, or that the events or everything that's happening within it is a bit excessive. And I'm afraid to say that from growing up in a small town, based on my own life experiences, I think life is probably a lot worse. I recently caught up with an old hometown friend, and we did what most old hometown friends do when they get together. We reminisced, we took stock of our lives, but also the lives and where all of our friends had ended up. But we also made a list of the various tragedies or the friends and acquaintances that we'd sort of lost over the years. Within that list of friends and acquaintances, we had 2 suicides, both of which were heavily addicted to drugs. We had 1 overdose. We had 1 friend who was stabbed to death. We had 1 friend who was in prison for armed robbery. We had another friend who had lost their leg during the Iraq War, went on to abuse drugs, and then eventually had a heart attack. And we had 2 friends who were alcoholics who both ended up dying together in a drunk driving accident. So for those of you who consider the events that happen to the group of characters in this novel to be unrealistic, for so much tragedy to happen to such a small group of people, I can say that I am very happy you have lived a life in which you consider those things to be unrealistic. But please accept that to many, this is just a part of their lives and their lives growing up. And of course, it's not all doom and gloom. When me and my friend were making that list, we also looked at the successes of a lot of our kind of friends and acquaintances at that time. There's one politician, there's a music producer, there's two who went on to filmmaking, and there's many who just have families and appear to be living very happy lives. Anyway, sorry, that all got a little bit deep. Sorry about that. I think it's just because I was getting a little bit annoyed at people thinking that this novel was unrealistic and that all the events were a bit over the top and such things couldn't happen to such a small group of characters. Yeah, they can. It's kind of, to a lot of people, that's life. So I really feel like the people who are writing those things should get out of their bubble. But anyway, let's move on to the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. What I liked, I loved the writing and the pacing was solid all the way through. I loved all of the characters. Now, normally in a book like this, where you follow the different perspectives of different characters and their stories and how it all connects, you tend to kind of lean towards one story over another, or there might be like 3 out of the 4 that you love and one that you just thought was all right, or any kind of combination. But for me, I absolutely loved every single character and every single story in this novel. I just loved the different perspectives in this novel and how the novel chooses to drip feed you information within each story. And not knowing who to trust and what the ripples of the events that happen both in the past and the present might eventually lead to. And finally, I just loved the level of detail thrown into this novel. The small idiosyncratic things that just really brought the characters and the story to life. I would definitely say that this book's strength is its exploration of the smaller moments opposed to the larger statements it's making. And of course, there are so many more things that I really love that I could go into great detail about, but I'm not going to because I don't want to spoil things. What didn't I like? At times, it does lack a little nuance. The most moving parts of the novel are when it steps back and lets the events and actions taking place do the talking. Another thing I didn't quite like is the over-reliance on some of the high school girls being absolutely sex obsessed. So that's all they think about. Of course, that is an element, but I think it could have just been tuned down a little bit. And finally, some of the novel's political messages, or even the moments where it gets a little bit philosophical, felt a little bit forced. It could have just been tuned down a little bit or found a bit of a better balance. Just some of the characters go off on sort of massive speeches, and I felt like, yeah, there was a little fine tuning to be done in that area. But regardless of those small failings, this novel hit home quite a lot. I loved the way it was written. I absolutely adored each of the characters. I loved the small idiosyncratic detail that the novel goes into, the way the characters were pieced together, the way the novel builds, the way you have to really try to look between the lines and figure out some of the mysteries hidden within the novel. I just thought it was all absolutely brilliant, and I'm going to give this novel 5 stars. However, I might be leaning, as already mentioned, towards the 5 stars because of how close in age I was to the characters, how much I could relate to the characters, how much things in my own life and the tragedies of friends and acquaintances I've known sort of fed into my reading of this novel. I really did go down memory lane with this one, the things I've sort of witnessed and seen, especially my time at the skate park when I was younger. Yeah, so all of those things were playing into this novel, which meant it hit home just that little bit more. So that's probably where that extra star is coming from. I think for most people, if you enjoy this style of novel, it's probably a 4-star novel. But either way, excellent or fantastic, I would still totally recommend this. So have you read this novel? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all enjoying whatever you might be reading, and I'll see you all on the next one.